All right. So as promised, we will get started promptly here. Just wanted to welcome you all to today's webinar. It is entitled Accessibility and Captioning, Compliance for Solutions for Community Media, excuse me. This is being presented by TelVue. We have three great panelists here today who are going to walk us through some of your options for captioning. We would ask that if you have questions, you go ahead and use the Q&A, and we will read them out loud. And we'll try to take breaks in between, just as we get a bunch of questions. If not, we ask that you just enjoy the content. My name is David Gauthier. I'm the president of MassAccess, and we're happy to have you here today. Leading things off today is the president and CEO of the Alliance for Community Media. I'm going to hand it off to Mike Wassenaar. Mike.
Thanks, David. Welcome, everyone, to this discussion. Over the course of our time together here, we're going to talk about accessibility rules that PEG channels and community media channels should understand. We'll talk about implementation at an individual center and what that sort of has meant philosophically and practically. And then we'll talk about other technical solutions that are being thought about within the industry. So for my first sort of portion of the discussion, I'm going to give you a sense of the overall different rules that you should be considering and understand. And really, there's two sets of accessibility rules that I'm going to be talking about on today's presentation. The two sets really are FCC rules about distribution of programming on multi-channel video systems, cable channels, but as well television. All television transmission is really covered by the FCC. So there are a set of accessibility rules that pertain specifically to transmission of television. And then we'll talk about the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is not administered by the FCC. It's administered by the Department of Justice. That pertains to all organizations and businesses in the United States. And because there are two sets of accessibility rules, very often people get confused about which rules pertain in which instance, who has jurisdiction over which types of accessibility I should be considering. So I'll talk about both of these sort of regimes to be thinking about in your work. The FCC rules have been in place since 1998. They've changed a bit over time. The ADA rules, though, have been in place since 1991. They've been in place longer, and as the federal government does auditing of local governments, and as there's different lawsuits that occur regarding disability rights access, the federal government has determined different implementation of the act. And we'll talk specifically about that in a moment or two, because that'll affect just about all of us in the room here today in the next several years. So let's talk first about the FCC captioning rules. You have two different URLs that are going to be in the materials that you'll have that I want to make sure that you can refer back to. The thing that they're here on this slide, the thing that I think is important for you to remember is that all channels in the United States, all television channels, must be captioned, and the FCC outlines specific standards for those captioning. It's actually on that URL. I know that sounds a little weird for folks in public educational and government television specifically. That's because you have been subject to a number of so-called self-implementing exemptions that were put into place by the FCC in 1998. We'll talk about those in a moment. That's the reason why, even though these rules are sort of clearly articulated on the FCC's website, very often PEG channels specifically will be exempt from those rules because of one of a number of exemptions. The rules give out information about how consumers can file complaints and how quality of standards pertain specifically to like placement of captioning, the quality of captioning, the understandability of captioning, and the like. Those exemptions are listed on that URL that I've got on this slide. I think the most important exemptions and they relate to things like text-based programming, programming in the middle of the night, non-English language programming. The most important exemptions for community television operations in the United States are two that specifically relate to your revenue. One of them is an exemption for all channels with less than $3 million in revenue. That I think is most people in the room here today. But that would be for each individual channel. And then also for captioning costs, which exceed 2% of the gross revenues for an organization. When the rules were put in place back in 1998, almost all captioning was done by people, not by computers. The captioning was done manually, very often in real time. And we've seen actually the cost of captioning going down radically in the last decade, even going year over year or month over month, the cost has gone down. So in many cases, that 2% of gross revenue figure would not pertain to your organization, but it's something to examine and think about specifically as we talk about these captioning rules. The thing to remember for these exemptions is that if your cable channels are streamed online, the exemption for your channel continues to that online video delivery. That's an important thing to be thinking about, specifically because Congress in 2011 outlined that all video in the United States should have accessibility if it's in an online media delivery. That was actually encapsulated and enshrined in the 21st Century Communications and Video Act, which was authored by Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts. You actually can see a reference to the act there on that URL on the FCC's website. The CVAA was passed about a little less than 15 years ago, 14 years ago. It describes the standards specifically for online media content and devices that stream media. So it would be for phone delivery, smart TV delivery, and other forms of media delivery on different devices. That's all sort of enshrined in that CVAA. All online video in the United States must be captioned unless there is an exemption, right? So for your streaming purposes, if you are exempt on a cable channel, the exemption for that material follows it into the online delivery space. If you're doing online only video, that is not exempt. All right, let me repeat that. Online online only video must have captioning per the CVAA. All right. For the last number of years, we've been asking the FCC to clarify its reporting standards for its captioning registry. It actually maintains a registry of all television channels in the United States with points of contact for consumer complaints. If consumers have problems with captioning quality or captioning availability or captioning transmission. Um, uh, we're hopeful actually that the FCC was going to rule on our request that public access producers not file on that database because we think it would just simply be spurious information, not really useful for consumers, particularly if we're dealing with exempt channels in most instances. We expect a ruling a little bit later on this year on that issue. Once that ruling is in place, we expect that your channel would actually have to put forward a point of contact for consumer complaints. And the FCC actually has put forward a July 1st deadline in earlier captioning rulings for points of contact to be filed, along with exemption status for all television channels in the United States. So we expect to actually be working with the FCC to be helping your channel put forward that information in that contact registry. We actually think that'll be helpful for consumer complaints and clarifying questions that pop up about captioning for consumers. Let's talk a little bit about disability access rules under ADA. This is probably the more important, larger question for online delivery and actually pertains to a lot of your work, even beyond your online delivery of video. The Department of Justice put forward new rules, particularly regarding government institutions and the Americans with Disability Act. That Title II of ADA focuses on state and government institutions. It's published in the Federal Register earlier this April. There's actually a website reference for you in the materials. The process actually for implementing these rules actually started more than 10 years ago, and ACM was involved with some of the rulemaking on this. It specifically addresses the quality of online captioning and the quality of motion-based video experiences for people with disabilities. It's meant to empower people with disabilities to be civically engaged and to help their lives. It affects all local and state governments in the U.S., as well as the contractors who provide video for local and state governments. So think about that if you're a nonprofit that is supporting government video in your locality. It doesn't change the responsibilities under ADA. You still have a responsibility to effectively communicate with citizens, and there's actually a process for describing an undue burden if you are trying to effectively communicate. But it outlines a specific standard for web content. And it's this web content accessibility guideline promulgated by the W3 consortium. And actually, that's the level that of conformity for online delivery of content that the ADA is now going to be requiring all municipalities in the next several years. There's actually a link that I'll provide for you for the rules themselves. The thing you should understand is that this standard includes multiple types of disabilities, and the version was written some 6 years ago. So it's not like this is the most forward technological stance for accessibility right now on the web. It's actually a standard from several years back. And the thing that we should be thinking about is as our technology changes, we need to be in conformity with the expectations that people have, not just in the United States, but across the world for how to use that technology. So this is actually asking local governments to go to a quality standard that was put forward some 6 years ago. The main thing to understand with the accessibility standards is that the Department of Justice chose sort of not the lowest level of conformity for success for understanding for people with disabilities, and not the highest level of conformity, but a middle level, if you will, sort of like a Goldilocks approach. The things to understand is that as we're delivering content, that content has to be perceivable for audiences. Audiences have to be able to operate in the environment online. They have to understand the content itself. And then the solution has to be robust and not just be one technological platform. Most importantly, I think for public educational and government channels across the United States, time-based media has to conform to a couple of standards specifically that you should be thinking about in the next several years. Live content has to have audio in synchronized media captioned according to this conformity level in the standard. That means that any live event that you stream online has to be captioned by the deadline that the DOJ promulgated with this rule. And then, I think just as importantly, pre-recorded content has to have audio description, meaning that there is a narrator providing description of what's happening in the video so that people who are blind can or have visual impairment can understand what's going on in a screened environment. These are sort of two important things to be thinking about as you're thinking about solutions you have to be providing. And specifically, it's the responsibility of local governments to say whether or not they have the ability from a budget standpoint to actually provide these solutions or not. I'll get to that in just a moment. The effective communication standard under ADA is extremely important for everyone to understand. It states that it is the responsibility of not just local governments, but nonprofit entities and actually businesses to effectively communicate with residents with disabilities by the means that those individuals determine. That's an important note to be thinking here. We can't just come up with a technological solution that fits for every individual in the community with a disability. It's the responsibility of all organizations, and specifically local governments, to be meeting the needs of individuals who have disabilities, to be able to make sure that the services can be effectively delivered. Now, there is a standard for saying that if a local government or a nonprofit can't afford to provide that individual the means to communicate because of an undue financial burden, there is an ability for that local government to specifically state that, but it has to be someone who's responsible to the public for the services provided. It can't be a lower level department official. Typically, it has to be somebody who's in an administrative role of responsibility or an elected official stating that there would be an undue burden if an accommodation was put forward. In all instances, though, it's your responsibility to actually determine what accommodations people may be asking for. We can talk about that a little bit more in more detail in the chat if you'd like. Just kind of be mindful of time here in the presentation. The rule sets 2 deadlines for implementation for online accessibility. For communities with over 50,000 residents, you have 2 years to comply with the order for all online and app-based communication. So that would be April 24th, 2026. If your community or the service area that you have has under 50,000 people, you have 3 years to comply if you're a local government or if you're serving local government. That would be April 24th, 2027. So those are 2 dates to keep in mind as you're thinking about services that you're delivering in the future. The department expects that local government will audit and revise their services by those deadlines. It's in the interest, I think, of local governments and contractors to serve them, to assess the services they deliver online, to make sure that they actually conform with that WCAG 2.1 level AA level of conformity. You may have to certify your websites, apps, and the order actually contemplates that there might be replacement of apps or websites. And actually, there might be new products that come forward specifically to be able to meet these needs. We'll probably talk about that later in the presentation. So here's some quick tips that I think people should be thinking about as they're thinking about these rules. The first is you should be assessing and listening to the needs of your community. That's a key part of the Americans with Disability Act. If people need accommodations for certain services in person, you have a responsibility to accommodate them in person. The same thing is true with your online communication. You should communicate your obligation to accommodate individuals. One of the things that pops up over and over again is that if people wish to make a complaint or to seek an accommodation and they don't know who to talk to, it actually is a barrier to you providing services for them. So please communicate your obligation to listen to individuals. You should have a plan for online communications and any time-based media by the deadline that we expressed in either that 2026 or 2027 deadline. You should make an ongoing assessment of costs. You shouldn't just do a one-time assessment. I think it's important, particularly as technology changes and as vendors change, you should be doing a regular assessment of what costs are for accommodations. There's an expectation that you do that within the DOJ's rules particularly. You should be communicating this issue with decision makers at the local level. It's extremely important to make sure that they're not caught off guard, especially if complaints come to them about services. You should assess the compliance of your current inventory of communications and then plan compliance by the deadline. And I think that the 2 other things I've been really stressing with our partners across the country is that you should be working with vendors that are familiar with these standards and then seek products that conform with these standards, actually ask for them. And then there are actually financial resources available very often at the local level or through private sources to be able to help with that remediation. So There's my contact information if you want to talk with me directly, but I'll also give you this presentation, and we'll have plenty of time, I think, for questions here. And I think I hit my mark, David.
I think you did too, Mike. I think you
Okay.
did a great job. I do have a couple of questions for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
How will there be a distinction made between a nonprofit organization providing services to the municipality for these requirements of the municipality holding a meeting and the nonprofit providing or facilitating the distribution on television?
So it's not the nonprofit's meeting, it's the local government's meeting. So the local government will have the responsibility for provision of that service. If the nonprofit is providing them as a subcontractor, the Department of Justice particularly has seen that using subcontractors is not a way to get rid of your responsibilities, right? So this is one of the sort of delicate questions I know for many providers in Massachusetts, particularly, where you're a nonprofit entity, but you're like in a sole service relationship with a local government. So you need to outline this issue with local government because they will be on the hook. Okay. There's a separate set of responsibilities that a nonprofit has under ADA, right? And the standards are a little less strict than they would be for local government. But specifically, if you're subcontracting a service for local government, that is deemed to be like a government responsibility. I hope that's helpful.
Okay. Another one is just about the information itself, and if you'll be sending out the PowerPoint afterward.
David, what would you like? Do you want to
I'm
send it out, or I can
Yeah,
send it
I'm
out to
certainly
everybody on the
fine with
list?
it. We can connect afterward, and
Yeah.
I'm happy to distribute.
And then also I'm available as well for direct consultation if you want to talk about these issues, because I very often it takes a little while to sort of to digest everything. The reason I'm bringing up both the FCC and the DOJ, though, frankly, is a lot of people get them confused. They think that the FCC administers ADA compliance, which is not correct at all.
And the last question for you, Mike, is how is the size of the area served determined, especially those for small centers who cover a lot of different municipalities?
So it's interesting. If you're a nonprofit contracting with local government or providing multiple government services, each of those governments has a responsibility based upon their resident size.
Okay.
Right? So that would be I think by and large, most of the folks that you're dealing with will be dealing with that 2027 deadline. And keep in mind that, let's say, for example, you're providing PEG services to a local government, other communication services will be subject to this deadline. So you probably need to have some conversations with local government as well, because they're have to figure out how that works, for example, with their apps. Many local governments use parking apps, for example. Those parking apps have to be compliant to these rules. So it's important for you to have, I think, some strategic conversations with folks who are responsible at the local government level.
We have a couple more questions, but we will put them on hold for just a second. So we can get on to the next speaker, who is the president and CEO of TelVue Corporation. I'm going to hand it off now to Jesse Lerman.
So I'll actually reroute. We're going to have Matt go next.
I had a 50-50 shot.
Yep.
And I failed.
Yep,
So what are you going to
50-50.
do? What are you going to do? Matt Schuster is the executive director of the Public Media Network and will be next. So Matt, please take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm pretty much going to talk a little bit about what's moved us in our direction with working on accessibility beyond just requirements and being required to do so, and then how we've taken those steps forward. So really what we have started doing is we started really looking at how much accessibility is directly tied to our mission. And that one piece that we're really about is increasing access to information, increasing communication in our community. And we felt that we really needed to serve as many, if not everyone in our community, as best that we could. And especially that since we prioritize underserved communities in the work that we do, we really, as our board and team, felt that we really needed to start to look at how we address these kind of issues in all of our work moving forward. And so we started with captioning a couple of years ago. And so we looked at using captioning to address populations of community that are hard of hearing. We have about a 3% Spanish language speaking community, knowing that we could also start to serve them a little more directly. We're looking for a solution that could caption live across all of our platforms, that we could also caption our video on demand that we provide. Also knowing that it could then be used to help people access government meetings more, to find parts of the meeting that are occurring. And then we've just started beta testing a new feature through TelVue for automatic meeting agendas and metadata that is based off of the closed captioning that the system is generating as well. We started with a goal of captioning 50 to 70% of our programming. Our current goal we've set is to caption all of the programming that we have on the channels and that we provide online. In going into deciding who we're going to use for captioning and how we're going to address captioning, to do an assessment of the number of captioning providers that are out there, and the way that our system is set up, and that we program 5 channels, both HD online and SD for cable. The most cost effective was to really work with TelVue, which is our because we would have had to have 10 different units through some of the other caption service providers that are out there. So cost became a factor for us really fast as we're going. So we currently use TelVue for all of our programming, both online using Cloudcast for streaming, and also use TelVue for our mobile apps and OTT apps. So our goals, is that 24/7 live captioning across 5 channels. We have a mix of programming types that we're captioning, from, talk shows to government meetings, to events, to news packages. We do both live and pre-recorded, and we've been using the fully automated caption workflows that TelVue provides. And then we're also now doing Spanish language translation on most of our video on demand content as well. We don't do as much of that for the live captioning at this time, primarily because our Spanish speaking community is pretty small and we haven't heard from them yet the need to have that in the live captioning format. So one of the other reasons we chose TelVue is because of the 24/7 smart mode that they have in their captioning. So it really only looks and auto captions the unique programming that's being live streamed. So if captioning already exists on the programs that we're streaming through the channels, it doesn't recaption that content. So it saves us some costs in the long run. The way that works is it looks and sees what files are coming up to play, and it schedules those offline to caption them in advance. And the live events that don't have those captions yet are captioned live as we go, and we do that across all 5 of our channels. And then we're able to live caption all of our variety of sources for content. So we bring in live sources from government locations. We service 6 different communities. So we bring in over SDI, we bring over IP, all through a video router. We bring in some RTMP streams. We'll also pull in some social media streams from our county or from Zoom and other platforms that they're doing their own meeting coverage, and we just pull that in to air it for them. So then the way the automated captioning works is that it looks and it says, is there caption existing on this? If it exists, it pulls that captioning off of there and attaches it as a sidecar file, so that when we upload it online, it's there, or it auto generates a captioning for files and attaches it to the content we can then download that content and those caption files, and we're working on workflows to improve. And so we can also upload those caption files to archive.org for long-term captioning of content, where we're storing content long-term beyond the time that it's on our TelVue system. So we're displaying captions on all of our cable channels and our live streams. TelVue allows us and also display it on our video on demand, OTT, and mobile through TelVue Cloudcast. And then it's been pretty accurate to the degree that we actually take the time to set up custom language models. We haven't been as good at this as I want us to get to, but you do have the ability to go in and put in names and information so that the AI captioning, to essentially train the AI captioning so that it can spell it correctly and guess. And we tested it on some pretty rough names early on, and as long as we programmed those in, it got them correct. Now, that being said, it's only as good as the speakers. So we have noticed many times, if especially in Michigan, when we had some lazy enunciation on our D's and T's, especially, if it's a similar word and you leave off the end consonant, it's going to guess that other word and replace it in the captioning. But for the most part, it's a fairly accurate when we do train it. We're also able to use automation features, so we don't have to go in and redo this all the time. We can set up custom language models, the source language, if it's going to translate as well, and into what language, based on the series that we've set up in TelVue, or based on the source that the caption is coming from. So we can set up different models as we go for different meanings and different sources when they're set, and then we can kind of leave it alone, and we don't have to worry about going back in and making sure that somebody is doing that on a regular basis. Our TelVue system also gives us the ability to monitor our captioning from the dashboard, so we can, it'll show us the captioning on that dashboard itself, so we can verify that it's running, and also just show us an icon to indicate that there's captions on the programs that are coming up, so that we know we don't have to go to the cable channel to verify that the captioning is actually working. And then when we're looking at content, the other thing that we find helpful is that on all the content, an icon will show up to show us what's captioned. We can manually trigger caption generation if the system has not triggered it already, and we want to start that generation. We can also look at the preview, and it'll show us the captions as well. And the captions follow when we then publish onto the video on demand platform. And then, as I mentioned, one of the nice features is that we have searchable captions that way. So somebody can go in and search for something on the captions, and it'll highlight in the player for them all the different time codes for those captions, and they can click on that and go straight to that part of the meeting. Some of our clerks have found that helpful when they're working on minutes or looking for something specific. And then we can also select what we want to translate the captions into. TelVue provides a wide variety of caption translation options. We don't have that diverse of a community here, so we've just selected to primarily translate in Spanish. But if you have other populations with a variety of languages, you do have options in TelVue to also caption in those languages. And then the captions carry across onto our mobile iOS and Android apps for people, and also onto our over-the-top apps on Roku, Fire TV, and Apple TV. So in all of our platforms where we have our programming, captioning is available now. And in those situations where you do want to edit because you notice something in the captions that you feel needs to be corrected, you do have the ability to go in and edit the captions. We don't tell a lot of municipalities we have this ability, and we try not to publicize it too much because we don't want a lot of people coming back to us to say, hey, but if we do hear of something or notice something that's off significantly and we get a comment, we will go in and edit the captions. And you can also edit the captions in multiple languages as well. And then the new feature that we're excited about and building off of using the captions is a new that we're currently beta testing now about a week. is AI agenda automation and metadata feature. So the TelVue will look at for the meeting. Right now, it's for the meetings only, and it'll look at the closed captioning transcript, and it'll say, here are some key points of the meeting, and it puts in chapters for all those various points of the meeting and provides a summary of those parts as well. So somebody can quickly go through and say, at this point in the meeting, they're discussing this, and here's a quick summary of what was discussed. It'll also auto-generate descriptions for us. And if you deal with anything like we do here, getting any kind of decent summary description for people to know what really occurred in that video or in that meeting, is more of a challenge than not to get that put back in. So having AI be able to do it, and then we can quickly go in and make any corrections for editing is improving that process for us as well. And really the way we went about working to get buy-in and working with our board and looking at costs was we started at how did this tie it to our mission, and really had a lot of discussions with the board and team and with people in the community about needs and tying this back to our mission. And then we accepted the fact it doesn't have to all be done at once, especially if we're trying to work ahead of any kind of requirement that's coming down the pipe, that we can start to iterate, learn, add things in, see how it goes, and build on that. And really accepted the fact that we just have to take steps in the process, that we're not going to address all accessibility overnight, that we have to do what we can now, get started in the process, and keep iterating and improving upon our practices as we go. So to that regard, and knowing where we're headed and working on website accessibility, we've currently added a plugin called One-Click Accessibility that addresses a variety of the accessibility needs. It's a free tool that works with our WordPress websites. We know this probably won't be every solution down the road that we need, but it gives us a first step towards a lot of the accessibility guidelines without having to rebuild a completely new site and do a number of things. And there's a number of other plugins that are available out there, and this is kind of our first step as we start to look at, how do we want to address this long term? What else do we need? What are we looking at? And as we start talking to our community more to find out, how it's meeting their needs in the community, what they need, and what they're seeing. We also know that audio description is coming. We are not there yet. I'll be honest, I'm hopeful that AI is going to get to a point that's going to really help to make this, cost effective. I know it's probably not cost effective for us now. We will be doing pricing on it. We're going to talk to a number of our area community theaters are already doing audio description services for select performances. So we know that process and the techniques that they've learned are similar to be able to describe a on-stage show. Well, people are talking, to what probably audio description for video would be like, and how to train people if we're doing it manually. But we also know there's a lot of costs. There are some local foundations who are helping to underwrite some of those performances. We think there could be opportunity there, but we doubt we'll be able to get enough money to underwrite all of our programs. And all the programming content that we do, that's where we're hopeful AI will come into play at some point, but we're going to be doing some costs to see what we can do, and then talking to the community about what would be the priority programs to start with if we were able to afford to do so. So really, as part of looking at our future plans, we take a lot of process in what we do here in Kalamazoo to really work with our stakeholders and hold listening sessions in the community and talk to people in our community. We have a school for the blind here in town, so we're going to be meeting with them to learn more about, audio description services, what they need in that, what they would want to see in video in that, and working with the community that way. We've been working with the hard of hearing and deaf community already, but our community college has resources and a program for accessibility and sign language programs, and we're working with them on potentially launching some programs and some educational materials. So we're going to be looking to that community as well to help really inform us on are we meeting their needs? Are we not meeting their needs? What could we be doing differently? And part of that even goes to how we, alternate text and, what is helpful to them in alternate text for images. That's continually evolving, but from our community itself, what would they like to see? What kind of description is best, and how would they like to see it described? So we really look at this as a continual improvement. We're never done. We'll continually be getting feedback and seeing how we go, and then to help fund it. We do see potential in sponsorship opportunities for some of this, to get either sponsors for closed captioning to help underwrite closed captioning costs. Although not overly expensive, we could still have people's names put onto programs, even for some money above the closed captioning cost itself, to get recognition, tie themselves to the work as well. And that could also be a potential for audio description services once we get pricing and start to get an idea of what that would cost. And here's my contact information. And I kept pretty close to time as well. I think I went a little under to give a little more time for questions. So I'm happy to take those as well. And I'm also available if anyone wants to reach out to learn more about how we're using TelVue or what steps we've taken.
Thank you, Matt. Mike and I have been sort of answering some of the questions as we go. So hopefully we're providing you with the right information as we go. And I just wanted to say, just based on some of the questions that I'm reading, I certainly understand the cost part of things. And that has to be part of the equation for anything we're discussing these days. But I would also say that, as a user of the product that Jesse is about to outline for you, I could say it's a real value to your organization to be able to offer this type of service. It really is a sort of a feather in your cap. So yes, it's going to cost a little bit more money, but you're offering a public service that now it's that much better, and you're making yourself that much more valuable to the communities that you're serving. So I kind of look at it differently. And Mike, you've got something to add?
The one thing I would just amplify from your point, David, is that many of our communities go through needs assessments to determine equipment investment at the local level. That accessibility equipment is very much, I think I would say, needed, and it should be a part of those ongoing assessments, perhaps even in a cable franchising discussion, for example. So just to get to Matt's point, providing information for people so they can take better access to information to help our democracy is a key part of our mission. And we just have to keep reminding ourselves of that.
Agreed. All right. So now I tried to jump the gun earlier, but this time it's for real going to be President and CEO of TelVue Corporation, Jesse Lerman. Jesse.
Thanks so much. And thanks, David and MassAccess, for hosting this webinar. And big thanks to Mike and Matt for joining me today. So let me share my screen here. And jump into my slides. So Mike did a great job taking us through kind of the regulatory compliance side. And then Matt, of course, giving a great practical overview of how they've been dealing with accessibility at a public media network. So I'll jump in here and focus a little more on tech and specific solutions. So again, we've spent quite a bit of time talking about why captioning is a good idea. And I think also a little bit about what to caption, but talking about that a little bit more, just kind of recapping all the paths, not only cable and broadcast channels, that's an obvious one, and your streaming channels, whether that's going to web, mobile, OTT, that includes video on demand and potentially live. There's some other angles we haven't talked about quite as much, but also social media live. Many of you may be streaming some of your live events directly to social media, or you're streaming to your own site and social media. You're posting videos to social media as well. So those live and on-demand videos that are going to social media, that's another consideration. In many cases, social media platforms may kind of hijack and do their own or offer their own captioning. Many of them will support both. You can either leverage, automated captioning on YouTube, for example, or they're capable of taking in live sources that already have captioning as well. And then some key decision points include, what are you going to caption? Only the bare bones that is required for WCAG, which also tends to be, primarily, on the DOJ side, that's primarily government programming. Only certain programmings like meetings alone. Are you going to do everything? So those are obviously key decision points, which I think Matt talked quite a bit about decisions at Public Media Network around that. So now jumping into how to caption, obviously one big topic is human versus AI. And Mike already mentioned that human captioning is still quite a bit more expensive. It tends to be around 50 times the cost compared to AI. I think, going back maybe 5-6 years ago, the AI captioning was kind of okay, but maybe not so great all the time. And it's really amazing how the accuracy has improved over the past 5 years. So the accuracy is really incredible. It's become, very highly accurate. But not only the accuracy, but also the latency, the decision time for AI to, get that audio in and then come out with highly accurate captioning. That's gone down to the point where you could almost start to make the case that AI is even lower lower latency compared to human captioning. Humans have to listen and react as well. So that latency time has come down quite a bit as well. So AI advantages obviously keeps improving as it's trained. Things like language models that Matt discussed are available, tapping into translation. And now some of these newer features that Matt also described, like auto summarization, automatic topic extraction, creating automatic highlights or meeting agendas, automated metadata. Those are all things that AI can really handle nimbly now. There are also hybrid solutions out there. It's kind of interesting. A lot of times the AI captioning will not only generate, the text, but also kind of keep tabs of how confident it is. So there's some hybrid solutions where you let AI do the first pass and then maybe hand off to humans to say, hey, 15% of this transcript, I'm not all that confident about. It fell beyond 85% confidence level. And then the humans touch that up for kind of a hybrid, and it keeps the cost in check. So that's something pretty interesting as well. So getting a little more into how to caption specifically for live. So obviously one approach is having a human captioner. They're listening to the audio, typing and send out a text stream that gets integrated. That could be on site or that could be remote. Oftentimes that'll be remote. They're just getting an audio stream over the internet where they are, and we'll send that text stream back over the internet. There's dedicated hardware captioning. That tends to be AI based. That's receiving the video and audio stream in and sending a text stream back out. There are cloud services, so captioning in the cloud, again, receiving an audio stream and sending text back from the cloud, all AI based. And then there are integrated platforms. That's the approach TelVue's taken, where we've integrated it all in tightly with our playout servers, within our hypercaster, within our encoders, and even within online video platforms like Cloudcast. Social media, again, often has its own solutions for captioning as well. And there are a variety of companies out there doing this sort of thing. On the kind of human side, there are companies like 3Play Media, Vitech, AI Media. You have dedicated hardware like Link, Enco, EEG, cloud services, of course, AWS, Google, Microsoft, all the big players. Others like Speechmatics and Rev. And then integrated platforms on the playout side. Your playout vendor probably does this. TelVue does, of course. And then social media, Facebook, YouTube, and whatnot. So in terms of the equipment behind this, so we have kind of the various ways that text stream could be generated from the speech to text. Normally, in a kind of a more traditional environment, you might have a caption encoder that takes that text stream in has the video coming in, and then it inserts the text as that broadcast spec 608, 708 captioning, and then you have your video out with the 608, 708 in it. And likewise, a decoder is kind of the other way around, that can take video with captions in and output the text, or even do burn-in. And then other, just other points when you're starting to dive in and explore captioning, you want to make sure all of your downstream gear can handle captioning. So you might say, oh, great, I'm doing some captioning now, live captioning on my server, but oh, the server is going into a downstream converter that is just eating the captioning, and it's going to stop there. Or maybe the cable gear that the cable company is providing, like modulators and encoders, maybe they are not supporting captions. So that's an important thing. Highly recommend, if you haven't done already, run a test. Get a hold of a file that has embedded 608, 708 captioning in it, and try to run it through your whole path. Is it making it through the cable? Does it make it through your live stream? Because there are a number of points along the way that could be, eating that captioning. If it is not passing through to cable, and it's the cable company's equipment, my understanding is they are responsible for fixing that. They cannot be providing you, whatever it is, modulators, encoders that don't support captioning if you're trying to do that. So that's something you should test and, of course, raise with them right away. So, in terms of the tech and solution that TelVue's taken with integrated captioning, putting that right in our playout platform, there are really a number of advantages to doing it that way. One is, of course, there's no additional hardware required. So as we talked about before, things like caption encoders and decoders, you don't need all of that because it's built right into the playout server platform. And as Matt has talked about some of these, key benefits as well, all the automation rules are built right in. So everything from, applying custom language models. So you may have a custom language model specifically for a town council meeting. And through automation, you can say, I have a series of my town council meetings. They run at these times. They're automatically recorded. They're auto-captioned. And when they're captioned, always use this custom language model. It's a one-time setup, kind of a set and forget. That could also be source languages. Maybe you have some programming where they're speaking Spanish. So you set that up and say, when this is captioned, expect Spanish. What's nice is when it's all tied in, it's just built into all your automation rules. You don't have some external system that you're like, oh, I got to remember to, at 9 o'clock, tell that external system that it's going to be receiving Spanish or to use this model. So a lot of benefit to have it all built right in. Another thing Matt mentioned was the fact that files, so when you're not live, files can be captioned offline in advance. And what's nice about that, it's actually higher quality. So with AI captioning, the more time it has, the better decisions it can make. So when you're captioning offline, naturally, you're going to wind up with somewhat better results than when you're captioning live, and you kind of got to get that captioning done. It's okay to maybe have a little bit of buffer. That's pretty typical in these systems. You may have like a 5-second buffer in there, but you're not going to take 20 or 30 seconds for something live. So that's another nice advantage. And also the way TelVue offers our captioning service, which we call Smart Caption, it is usage-based pricing. And one thing that's nice about that is it gives you complete control over the cost. So you can decide, do you go easy button and just say, look, I want everything captioned, but make sure you only caption unique programming so you're not burning usage when it's not needed. So that's saving cost. Or you can say, I'm only captioning these specific series, and you can dial that right in. Another advantage of integrated right in your playout server is you have multi-channel scalability. You don't have to incur the cost of adding all this extra equipment for every channel. It's really just software built right into the playout server. And it's easy to now export right out of your playout to go to your streaming platforms as well. And because you have all this control, you have a very low cost of entry, which is, I think, extremely helpful, because I think it is important to get started if you're not already captioning, and get started sooner than later. And if there's a high cost to entry, like you need to spend $20,000 or $50,000 for dedicated hardware just to get going, versus, hey, I can just buy 100 hours to start captioning this one particular meeting. It's a lot more flexible that way. So again, that's TelVue Smart Caption. That's our affordable, accurate, multi-language automatic captioning solution. One thing that's nice is it works, again, for offline files, whether for broadcast or VOD, but also works for live. On the offline side, supports over 50 spoken languages and can translate to over 100 languages. And on the live side, it supports right now 9 different spoken languages and also various translation options. So you can add Smart Caption live directly to your Hypercaster. Most of the models are supported, including the very popular AIO Plus models. It also works with external ProViews if you have one of our more modular systems. And we also support a standalone device. So even if you're not using a Hypercaster playout server, you could be using a different playout system. We do offer a standalone kind of a single channel, one rack unit platform where you can just bolt that on and get all the advantages of the Smart Caption Live for those channels as well. So, and with not only captioning, but we also support live translation, which is a key point. So with the live translation, you can now do dual language live captioning. So for example, that might be English and Spanish, and that can be happening on cable and streaming at the same time. Not limited to English and Spanish. It could be, other languages. Obviously, that's a very popular combination. But what's nice is now you have that on cable. Your end viewers would be able to pick on cable and select between, CC1 and CC3 through their TV and pick which language track, or on streaming, they could, pick between the different tracks as well. And captions are supported on all of the Hypercaster output paths. So whether you're, SD or HD SDI out, you may be using the integrated streaming right in the Hypercaster, and captions will carry on that as well, or a transport stream output out of the Hypercaster right to cable, that will all carry the captioning. So a little bit more on pricing, just to share. So, in terms of, hey, what would it take to get started here? For Smart Caption Live, when you're actually now going live on your Hypercaster, there is a one-time per channel license cost for that live license. That's a little under $2K per channel. If you didn't have a Hypercaster and using the ProView, what we call the ProView CC closed caption, that's the standalone captioner, that hardware cost a little under $6K for that. But again, there's no need for caption encoders, so you save a lot there. That can run easily 4K or more. It does require a Connect CMS account where a lot of the kind of backend stuff is managed. If you're already a user of Cloudcast, you have it. There's no additional cost then. And to look at the actual usage, so a package, it can become well under $2.50 per hour once you're buying in bulk. And there is a big advantage. The pricing comes down drastically the more you buy. So what's nice is you can buy it as like a CapEx bundle. If you prefer buying CapEx, you can, calculate out and, make an estimate and say, all right, for 5 years, I might need, 2,000 hours or 6,000 hours, buy it all in one big bulk bundle, and you're going to save a ton on the pricing as well. As you could see, like a starter package, 100 hours at around $1,500. But, if you jump up to 6,000 hours, it's not going up by the same multiple. It's only under $10,000 for that package. So those CapEx bundles will help you save a lot. And again, any like overnights, like if you're running community bulletin board or replays, you don't have to bother, captioning that program. You usually don't capture community bulletin board. That tends to be more static. Your replays only need to caption once. So when you actually calculate like how much unique programming do you actually run, and one thing that's nice, if you use a Hypercaster, you can use the as run and first run reports to get a really good estimate. You can run a report like, let me look at the last year across this type of program and see how much unique programming, and you'll get out immediately a very good ballpark of what you might need to replicate that for a year or 5 years. Translation comes in at around $3 an hour on the pricing. And Matt also mentioned as well, opens up some really nice sponsorship opportunities. And this is a great use case for the integrated overlay rules within the Hypercaster. So you can set up rules to say, put up these sponsorship announcements specifically for the programs you've chosen to caption. So it's a nice way to tie that in, and that can help offset some of the cost, or maybe even cover it all. Couple of tips on accuracy. High quality is very important for AI captioning. So, consistent audio levels. You don't want to have background noise. Clear speaking, of course, is better. We've already talked quite a bit about custom language models. AI captioning just keeps getting better and better, which is good news. And that caption editing is there. You can access that either from the Hypercaster user interface directly or up in the cloud. So great for touch-ups. Obviously, it would be very time-consuming if you felt the need to make it 100% perfect every time. That would take a ton of time, but it's nice to have it there. For that case, like Matt said, maybe someone spots something and complains, and it's nice that you can just very quickly get in, make a touch-up, and republish. So just a little bit here on some of the workflow. I'll go through this pretty quickly, but some of this is just showing screenshots so you get a sense of how easy it is to use within the Hypercaster. So I'll try to burn through these pretty fast. But within content management, you have individual and bulk actions to just manually say, I want to automatically generate captioning for this file. So if it's not already part of automation, you can always just do that one-off. And it'll pull up a menu. You can pick what's the source language. Are you using a custom language model? Options like a profanity filter. Do you also want to translate to which languages? You get all that at your fingertips. What's nice is the Hypercaster, when you upload files, it'll detect if it already has captions in it. You may have a file with embedded captions. It'll detect, it'll extract it. You then have all the other features available, just as if you use the smart caption generation. You could translate what was originally embedded. It will post up to Cloudcast. So it really follows however the captions show up, whether it was already embedded, it's automatically generated, or you are creating sidecar caption files from some other system like your NLE. You can attach that to files, and all the workflows are consistent regardless of how the captioning gets there. It highlights across the board, so anything that is being captioned, you'll see it right on the dashboard. You'll see a CC icon for that event on the dashboard. Within your programming screens, whether it's the calendar or the classic view, you get nice icons that display what events are being captioned. Another area that's kind of interesting, I'm not sure how many of you are doing this today, but the Hypercaster does have support for SAP, or secondary audio programming. And that allows a second language, like two spoken languages. Now we're not talking about captioning. This could be a English language track as well as a Spanish language track that actually has the audio. So if you have events where you actually have that both audio tracks being generated, the Hypercaster can take that in for live and also output that. As we're talking about the role of technology and the role of AI, there are kind of some interesting forward-thinking things here, like, well, maybe you don't actually have that second audio track being spoken, but you have the translated captions. Well, now you could go text-to-speech and generate a synthesized spoken audio track and do SAP all through AI. So the AI generates the English captioning, translates it to Spanish, and then you go, Spanish text to Spanish audio, and you mux that in, and now you have SAP with a synthesized audio track. So that's something we're looking at, some pretty cool, future ideas there. Again, anything that has captioning, once it's published, whether you're sending that out to the media exchange or the MMX, now that program will be shared with captioning, or to any of your mobile apps or OTT apps or to your website, that those captions will follow along. And as Matt mentioned, again, that makes it fully compatible with TelVue's Cloudcast web, mobile, and OTT app solutions. So what that allows you to do, if you're not already using it, that allows you to get your own custom branded apps, in the Apple App Store, Google Play, Roku Channel Store, on Amazon.com, the whole 9 yards. And again, your own branded apps, and will completely support captioning across the board as well for live and on demand. Let's just take maybe a quick pause here, David, and maybe this is a good breaking point for some additional questions, and then I could jump back in.
Absolutely. Jesse, for CapEx costs, do they apply to the first time each program runs only? And is the license on a one-time basis?
Yes, so it's yes to both of those. That one-time channel license that's required to light up the live part, that is a one-time. And again, that caption usage, it's always going to be intelligent and smart. It's only going to apply once effectively for the first run or the first time that program's captioned. You could then run that program 100 times and you're not incurring any more usage.
So it doesn't matter either which channel it goes out. So
And correct, exactly. Doesn't matter, channel 1, channel 2, that's fine as well.
great. Do the FCC rules apply to school districts or county office of education, or only government?
Yes. I'm actually read that the FCC or the ADA rules.
This question says FCC.
The FCC rules pertain to any channel on a cable system. Okay, there might be other requirements of a school district. And I didn't get into this very deeply, particularly if the district receives federal money for its programming and services. There's something called the Rehabilitation Act, which was passed in the 1970s, which requires that if you have certain educational services that go to people who are not disabled, they have to go to people with disabilities. So that's actually been a requirement in many school districts for captioning.
Okay. That's really all the questions, Jesse, if you want to.
Great. Yep. I'll dive back in.
Yep.
So as Matt also highlighted, once you have captions now, this is kind of the key to unlocking all sorts of, pretty exciting new features that are AI driven, such as taking that caption transcript and now automatically generating metadata, like detailed descriptions of a meeting, or automatically generating highlights. It doesn't apply just to government meetings only. You could see that in like the sports arena. Now you have sporting events and AI has that transcript and can automatically generate key highlights, like when all the goals were scored, for example. But obviously with government meetings, the ability to kick out automated agendas. So, agenda points, key decisions and whatnot, and have that integrated as chapters or indexes within the video. These become, new ways that your viewers can engage with your content, find what they're looking for more easily. It helps with search and discovery. So a lot of exciting features there. So we just recently launched our first auto agenda and metadata feature, and we're excited that Public Media Network, they're our first beta tester, giving us some great feedback. That feature runs right in TelVue Connect. So anything that's uploaded, whether it's from the Hypercaster or natively in Connect, you now have a new feature where you can say automatically generate agenda and metadata, and AI will take care of that in the background and will create all those chapter points. And again, that's now available in the player as well. That ability to search on captions, we've extended recently. We now have in Cloudcast site-wide caption and chapter agenda search. So not just within a given program, but across your entire library. So you can search for terms and, we'll show all the matches and highlight this matched 9 times in the captions for this program or 3 times in the chapter. And then you can drill in and you'll see all those terms highlighted. You can click on the time code to jump right to that point to make it easy to find topics of interest. Or you'll see it highlighted in the chapters as well, whether those are chapter points you added or you're using the new auto AI agenda generation feature as well. So new ways to make it really easy for your viewers and your community to get in and engage with your content, find what they're looking for. With the caption translation, of course, the players in the app, so we'll present a menu if you are including more than one language. The end viewer can, of course, pick which language they want to see that captioning in. We've already talked about the caption editing. Maybe just one point there. If you're doing a lot of editing and you're doing multi-language, you may actually be better off editing the primary and just regenerate the translations. But you can go in and edit in each individual language. I don't know how many people you may have on staff who are going to speak 5 languages, but that is an option as well. And within Smart Caption, there's usage reporting, so you can easily see how much you've used of what you purchased. Another thing that's nice, it doesn't expire. If you buy a bucket of 1,000 hours, it doesn't expire in a month or a year. You have that until you use it. And you can also get automatic email alerts that will notify you, for example, oh, I want to get notified when I only have 10% left, get an email alert on that. All the kind of UI and workflow features we talked about, we showed earlier on the Hypercaster side. Just about every one of those has an equivalent on the Connect side as well. So you can do a lot of this in Connect native. You don't have to do it through your Hypercaster. So really all of the individual generate captions or translate or do that in bulk. Searching based on what programs have captioning or not. You have all those tools both within the Hypercaster and within TelVue Connect. And Connect also has its own set of workflow rules. So again, some organizations are more cloud-centric. Maybe they're not even using a playout server, but they're using Cloudcast. They need all these same tools in the cloud. So we've put it in both places. So I want to jump over now and talk a little more about Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, WCAG. So a little bit from the tech side or process side. If you're diving into this and you want to improve your website, there's a couple of approaches. One is to go through an audit, and that often can be a human audit. It's probably the most accurate way to do it, but maybe a tad more expensive. So you have an expert go do a full audit of your site. They'll generate a report, and now it's up to you to start fixing these things on your site one way or another. There's also tools out there that will do auto scans. There's a ton of them. If you just Google, WCAG auto scan, you'll just get a laundry list. And many of those tools are great and can be a really good way to get a quick view of how your site's doing. So that's kind of the audit fix approach. And another one that's very popular out there now is more of an automated approach, which uses an overlay, or typically it's like a JavaScript widget that you would add to your site. And in fact, I believe MassAccess on your website is using one of those overlay widgets. There are actually a bunch of companies out there that do it. 2 big ones are Accessibility and UserWay. So this is really the quickest solution to WCAG compliance on your site, where you pay for this plugin, pop it into your site, and it kind of does all this magic to make your site, I'll say quote unquote compliant. I mean, we could spend a lot of time on this. I think it does a very good job, but it's not necessarily perfect. So those tools will do a few things in the foreground. It could be doing things even on the fly as it's rendering the site to fix things in the user interface itself. It could be adjusting color contrast, text size, all sorts of things in the foreground level. But many of these tools even work in the background and will do some pretty cool things. They may scan all of your images, and now this is where AI comes in, and now they're using AI, OCR and image recognition to automatically create alt tags for all of your images. So there's an AI component in background processing, and these tools may do that on a periodic basis as well, like every 24 hours, rescan your site to add in this automation. So there's really a mix of approaches here, and these overlays, are pretty interesting. Pricing wise, this is just an example from one of the 2 companies I mentioned. They price based on the number of pages on your site. So one tip is you can make sure you put your site into Google Search Console, so it does the indexing and you'll know how many pages you have. If it's under 1,000 pages, it's around $500 a year, I believe, and $1,500 a year for sites under 10,000 pages. Above that, you get into enterprise negotiation type pricing. Certainly, it'd be you got to believe that all the big website CMS tools out there have to be looking into this and are going to have to deal with it, right? So you think about that grace period you have to comply. You got to imagine there's going to be more WordPress plugins, or if you use Wix or a site generator like that, how are they not going to be providing the tools because so many sites are going to need to be compliant. So I think that's another bit of good news, as you know, some of this may take a little bit of work and a little doing. It's only going to get better and better. AI is going to get better. You know, more companies are going to have to step up their game and make sure the tools just make it easy for you. So I think that's a bit of good news here. And one other thing, I'm not a true expert in this area, so maybe take this with a grain of salt, but I was doing a little bit of research on what, the accessibility community thinks about these overlays. And there is a great site I recommend you check out called overlayfactsheet.com. It paints a little bit of a negative view about these overlays because they're not perfect and they can actually create confusion for people who are trying to use their own screen readers. There can be conflicts. So they're trade-offs. It's not perfect, but I think, again, like we've talked about with captioning, they're just going to get better and better and hopefully solve some of that more and more. But it's worth kind of checking out that site, I think, just to get a little bit of a different perspective. Here's an example of what that overlay widget has right from the MassAccess site. So you just get a sense, like, what do these widgets do? They'll give you things like a profile. So they have different profiles, like, hey, I want to turn on the seizure safe profile, for example, or vision impaired. So kind of preset settings. You can make content adjustments, color adjustments, orientation, things of that nature. But check out, I'll drive everyone to your site, David. Everyone go to massaccess.org and you'll see the little widget in the corner. It has like an orange accessibility symbol. Click on it and play with it a little bit. It's good to kind of get to know what ththese tools do. So for TelVue Cloudcast itself, obviously, we provide this piece of it's a web player that many of you are integrating right in your own site. So it's obviously important, as you are going to be faced with being compliant. We need to make sure, of course, that our piece here, the Cloudcast web player, is compliant. So all of our customers who put it in their site don't wind up breaking their compliance. So we've been spending a lot of time. We've actually gone with the audit fix approach. For a number of reasons. If we went with an overlay, it could get pretty weird if you're embedding our player in an iframe in your site and there's a overlay there and you got a different overlay on your own site. So we went with a more native approach. One of the benefits there when you do go with a native approach is you're truly fixing your code, right? You go with the overlay, it's kind of a Band-Aid, right? It's fixing the fact that your site isn't compliant versus actually going under the hood and addressing the compliance issues. So we went with an audit and fix approach, and we've got that compliance way up into the upper 90%. It's something we're always going to be working on. It's one of those things that will be never ending. You'll need to scan regularly to fix, but that's something we had focused on, and which is great. So we're now effectively at that DOJ requirement compliance. So when you embed Cloudcast Player, that portion should be compliant as well. That also works for the OTT apps, for the mobile apps. And it is interesting. I think WCAG or these DOJ requirements apply to OTT as well. And that's something we need to look at. I don't think the tools are as readily available. There isn't like a out-of-the-box OTT audit tool. It's a lot more specialized. On the plus side, a lot of the OTT apps use like the native frameworks from, the big players like Apple and Roku, and kind of in the same regard, they have to make sure their tool sets are going to be compliant, good color contrast, proper text size. So following their standard templates, I think things will kind of naturally fall into place there, but that's one we have to look at as well. Now I want to jump over to audio description. So I'm going to try here just to switch over to web browser. Let's see if I do this without breaking everything here. I'm going to click on this tab. Hopefully everyone still sees this, but here's just an example of a video clip with audio description. Just going to play a little bit because it drives home the point exactly what it is in case you haven't encountered.
Parachuter glide through the sky above. A woman and two men walk toward the camera. They are Swati, Banks, and Andrew. Andrew has a camera on his helmet. The three climb onto a small airplane.
So you get the point. So it's basically, spoken narration, ideally mixed between the original audio of the track, which is a tricky thing to do. And, how you integrate that in players, that's going to be a whole thing. And people, different technologies will present it different ways. Here, it's kind of done outside of a YouTube video within, I guess, 3Play Media within their player, and they have a toggle on and off for that description track. Sometimes audio description will not mix it in. It will pause the video, then add the audio description, and then jump back to the video. So as you can imagine, this gets very tricky from an AI standpoint. There's a lot going on here to do this through AI. But just for a little fun, I did some, Googling around to see, is anyone doing this already? And I came across this company called Audible Site. So this is pretty interesting. And I said, all right, let's see how good this is. So I just quickly created 2 short 1-minute clips. The first one is, I think, it's a science video about dinosaurs. So I'm going to go over here. Let me click edit and see if I can just kind of explain what's going on here. So what this tool did, I uploaded that 1-minute video and it processed it pretty quickly and spit out all of these recommended audio descriptions. Okay, so I'll click play here on the video. All right, so you see that first thing, and the AI said a large dinosaur walking across a rocky area next. I mean, pretty good. Here it said a toy dinosaur in a field of grass. A bird with a skeleton in its body, right? This is just exactly what the AI came out with. So the idea in this tool is you can then go through and pick which one of these, audio descriptions you want to include. So you can go through and see, maybe some of them don't make sense. You can also edit it. Like this next one said a banana that is being held in a glass. I think it's maybe a bone or a joint, they're showing there. So it's wrong, but, kind of like caption editing, you can go in and fix it or maybe not include it. And then here you have like voice selection. And then this is kind of neat. Now you can preview based on what you've selected. What would this video look like with the audio description? So let's do that and do a preview here and hit play.
Large dinosaur walking across a rocky area next to a mountain.
So you see here it's pausing.
Back to life using X-ray videos and 3D technology to reanimate them. See
A bird with a skeleton in its body.
however.
So, I mean, I'll say I was pretty impressed. I did not expect it to be this good and this easy, but that was kind of cool. So then for another quick test, I uploaded a short 1-minute video. It's one of Public Media Network's government meetings. And there's not a lot going on in this meeting, right? And you imagine with meetings, it's going to be a lot of static content. So across this 1-minute clip, it just came up with 2, recommended 2. A man sitting at a table with a microphone. And then let's see here, they have a group that comes up and it says a woman giving a presentation to a crowd. So, still, I think that's interesting. And one of the points here, the audio description itself in terms of cost, if you're going with human-based audio description, it's extremely expensive. It's like $15 to $30 per minute. Now, again, there's a potential hardship exemption that that Mike talked about. In this tool I was just showing, their pro package costs something like $200 a month, gives you 10 gigabyte a week of processing, and you get 10 minutes free if you just want to play around. That was at Audible Insight. Let's see, one other point I was going to make here with government meetings. It's interesting, how valuable is like all the nitty-gritty detail of describing what's happening during a government meeting, where the DOJ requirements here are all about, government programming. A lot of that will be meetings. Maybe something like using audio description just to narrate who is speaking, announce who the speaker is. That might be enough to really say we're doing it. And that is a lot easier, from an AI standpoint as well, compared to actually analyzing, images and video, full up analysis. So that could be an interesting angle. Again, I don't know whether that would be acceptable. That's one of those things that may often fall back to what is your community saying is acceptable, because you need to listen to them. So anyway, that's just a couple of things on audio description. Another one we didn't talk about is sign language. And, I was also looking around like what's going on with AI for sign language. And there's a company here called Synapse that will do speech to ASL picture in picture, right? So you can take your, transcript or the captioning, that speech, and generate, images of a person signing what was being spoken, and maybe mux that in picture. So you could see where using AI and tech, even something like ASL is now possible to automate, which is kind of cool. And kind of to close with some practical tips here. On the captioning side, again, strongly recommend you confirm that captions are flowing through your cable system and web streaming, whatever you're doing. So get a hold of a test file and check that out. Lean on your cable company if they're blocking it in any way. Highly suggest getting started now if you're not already captioning. Go with a low-cost approach. Again, something like Smart Caption with its usage base allows you to really control that, because it's important to start gaining experience, develop a strategy. You really want to get ahead of the curve here, because even if that deadline looks like it's looking like a couple years out, how time flies and things take time. It's going to take time to get your budget through, to get everything checked out and integrated. So it's a good time to start now. Consider adding in some world language translation. Take a look at your community. Do you have a few languages that are really important, and get started with those? And you'll also start to see the benefit of these tag-along features like caption transcript search or AI agendas and metadata. Once you're doing captioning, it's a simple, easy step to go there as well. And then practical tips on the WCAG side and beyond. For WCAG, take a look at whatever website CMS you're using now, WordPress, Wix. Start looking at the tools they offer. They may have some simple plugins that help get started right away. Try one of these auto scans. Those are readily available just to get a sense, where are we right now? Are we, 70% compliant or 10%? Is there one area that if we focused, it would, knock us up, a huge percentage for fixing that one thing? Register your site with Google Search Console so you get your page count if you want to look at one of the overlays or the widget approach. That may be a very, manageable cost way to get to, near compliance, in a snap. So I think it's good to check out that cost and consider adding that overlay approach. On audio description, that's probably a wait and see right now to see where tech and AI go with that, and how things go in terms of exemption. I don't know that you need to jump right into that. You may want to start some early conversations. Another thing we didn't really talk about, but is something to think about, is adding a website accessibility statement to your website. You'll see more and more sites doing that. That's kind of a statement saying, hey, we're serious about this. We understand it's important. We may not be that far along, but this is what we've done. This is what our roadmap looks like. The only thing I'll say is if you're going to do that, run it by legal, because it really may create a contract by putting it on your site. That if you say, oh, by the end of the year, we're going to have all of our meetings captioned, and then you don't, you could get in a little bit of hot water there. So, try to plan in advance. As we said, these deadlines will creep up sooner than you think. It's great to get ahead of the curve. When you're on top of this, you're increasing value to the community, to your stakeholders, and that's important. This is another way where you can show how much value your community media channel adds to your community, and that's a good thing. It's great for obviously expanding your audience, increasing accessibility, and it unlocks these new exciting ways to connect with your community. So that's what I have. Hopefully there's still, we're right at the end, but let's see if people are still on the line, if there's some additional questions.
Thank you, Jesse. I just want to give everyone on the panel here a chance for some closing remarks, if you have any, or any additions that you'd like to make. Mike, go ahead.
I want to underline one other aspect of what Jesse just said in his closing remarks about the FCC. Their interest is to ensure that residents and citizens are served well by the services that are provided. So I can point specifically to the experience of our friends at PCTV in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. that made the investment in doing closed captioning work at the behest of the Disability Rights Commission. They devoted municipal money to do captioning on a regular basis, and the captions weren't being transmitted by their cable provider, which is an FCC violation. This was then flagged, but to the FCC and while the cable operator never responded to the community television operation, basically, Sean at PCTV spent a good 8 months trying to get someone on the line. It took one call from the FCC to get the corporation to hustle because substantial fines are in play for a cable corporation which does not transmit captioned product to viewers. So keep this in mind. The FCC is a cop on the beat when it comes to this issue, and they can be the friendly people in your community. So if you're making the investment, make sure that the investment is getting to consumers.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Matt, you have anything that you'd like to add toward the end here?
Yeah, I'd just say, you know, costs keep coming down. So costs are always a challenge in our current budget situations, and declining cable revenue. It's understandable, but look for those solutions. And, you know, the role that it plays and the value it provides and the service it provides to our community really outweighs the cost in the long run, and look for those opportunities to bring in grants or other money to help at least with the initial costs.
Thank you, Matt. And Jesse, the last word goes to you.
Well, I really concluded already, having just wrapped up my section. So I'll just conclude by saying big thanks again to Mike and Matt for joining me today. And thanks to MassAccess for hosting this and partnering with ACM to, you know, invite the ACM members as well. So again, really, you know, big thanks to everyone. Really appreciate it. And,
Well,
and of course, any questions anyone has, you know, particularly on the tech side or my side, you know, email me directly, and happy to chat.
okay, excellent. A lot of great information today. Thank you to the panelists for first and foremost for being here and providing all of this information. And thanks to everybody who attended today. We'll be sharing all the materials with you in the coming days. So please keep an eye out for an email from me. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to any of us. Thanks again. Have a great afternoon.